Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us in our Main Summer Camps webinar series. We're excited to be today at Acadia Insurance, so thank you to Acadia for hosting us today, and also thank you to our year-round sponsor, Androscoggin Bank, and to Jim Chalmers, who has brought us wonderful speaker today to work with us on a topic that I know everybody has on their minds, one that we don't really want to have to address, but we need to be prepared for, which is the unwanted intruders in our camp. So I'm going to let Jim introduce our speaker, and just logistically, hopefully everybody can hear and everything's working okay, but there is a box on your computer where you can type in any questions that you have, or if there's anything not working right, just let us know. We'll be able to see that. And thanks for joining us today.
All right, thanks, Katrina.
Thank you.
Good morning. Just want to take a chance to introduce Scott. First off, my name is Jim Chalmers, the Chalmers Insurance Group and Chalmers Camp Insurance. Very important and actually very excited to partner with Scott Durst of TetraPoint this morning to speak about his presentation and the unwanted intruder. But first off, one quick housekeeping item. And that's just, if you hold all questions to the end, there's actually a chat box, question box where you can type it in. We are recording this session, so we'll be available for future use in reference for training. So we'll take care of and address any questions at the end. So with Scott, this past year, Scott Durst, the founder of TetraPoint, and I had the opportunity to meet one another through a mutual client. And as we got talking, I had an idea come to my head, bringing his talent, his experience, and background to the camp community. And after several emails and conversations, here we are this morning offering a webinar to all of you. As a background for Scott and point of reference for you, Scott is a veteran of 32 years in law enforcement. He graduated from the Ohio State Police Academy in 1979. Scott spent 3 years as a state trooper before moving to Maine in 1982. When he joined the Portland Police Department. Scott spent a year working undercover as a cab driver, targeting drug dealers in the greater Portland area, and he co-founded the department's tactical team and served on it for 7 years. Scott joined the state's drug task force in 1990 and spent the next 21 years as an agent with the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency, where he specialized in undercover operations and developed a working relationship with the DEA, FBI, and ATF, targeting drug organizations throughout New England. Scott also served 15 years in the United States Army, both in active duty and the reserves, and he was deployed in Bosnia for a year as part of the personal protection detail, providing security for the State Department. In 2003, he was deployed to Iraq with the 94th Combat Support Unit and spent the next 17 months providing security operations throughout the country. In 2012, Scott spent a year in Afghanistan as a law enforcement professional training a covert police, Afghan police unit, and he was embedded and trained with Denmark's TF7 Special Forces unit. He's a graduate of both military and law enforcement schools and received his BS in criminology from Hudson University. Scott, thank you for leading the webinar today. We're very excited and looking forward to hearing from you.
Oh, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Yeah. I really appreciate Jim and I having a chance to get together here. Jim and I have known each other for a little while now. And again, as he approached me on this subject, with TetraPoint, we are all retired law enforcement and veterans. And we've had a lot of knowledge and experience in the security field. We've obviously been talking about the active shooter situation. And when Jim approached me, we have been putting on these trainings in schools, businesses where there's actual campus structures. And so when he came to me about the campus for camps, it was like, wow. So we had to really readjust our thinking because it's such a logistics issue. And again, Jim told me, some of these camps could be platforms with a tent, or at the totally other end, which is a very more of a high-end kind of camp where they're obviously going to have security, maybe gate guards and stuff like that. So I basically met with my guys and gals, and we decided, how would we want to approach this? And we all agreed with our background for a positive outcome. And it's communication, preparation, and training. And we've utilized that, whether it's, in the military, law enforcement, in the business world. I think it's the three top steps to take to really address any situation. So we're not going to have all the answers here. So when this is all said and done, hopefully you'll have some questions. We're all about input. We're all thick-skinned here. If you think you might have a better way of doing it, or maybe some ideas, that's how we will grow. So I break it down into kind of inside the camp and outside the camp with communications. And communication is the most important and powerful tool in providing a successful solution and outcome of any serious situation. In these examples that we will discuss today, it could be the difference between actually life and death. Inside the camp, so making sure that everyone, as they say, are on the same sheet of music is paramount in the success of any situation and outcome that starts and ends here. So, and I'll get into this later, if you have everybody on board, they're been appraised and trained in the whole steps to be taken, and one person does not, in a situation, that one person may be the difference between a successful outcome and one that does not. And we were just talking here recently about, again, it starts out with communication, and we're looking at logistically how are you going to be able to communicate with staff around your camp. And what we found out is, providing what basically comes down to portable radios. They're very inexpensive. There's Midlands, there's all kinds of different products. We use Midlands. It's a very small radio. It's not, something that's huge on somebody's hip or whatever. So each staff would be given one. They hang on to it. We also suggest that they come with a ear mic. And it's not one that they're going to be carrying around like Secret Service. It's one you would put in your pocket for when a serious situation may occur. Again, with those, you would have what we would establish keywords. Keywords would be that if there is a situation, your person that you would suggest as the supervisor for communications, that's what everything would go through, so there's not a whole lot of confusion. But with these, they would be able to communicate with each other, and also then, if you have your mic in there, you can the staff can act in a calm and direct way to not panic campers and visitors and get them to a safe and secure location. And throughout this thing, that's the number one priority, is getting to a safe and secure location. Again, like I said, designate a supervisor that will be the primary communication manager. Less is best during the initial report. Quick and precise information is critical, and a lot of air traffic will confuse and cause precious time in getting to safety. So again, when I said we developed code words that you could already have established with your staff, and an example would be like red would be an active shooter, yellow would be an assault in progress, maybe black, unauthorized intruder. So when you're going through your daily routines with your campers, somebody may say that over the air. Now it alerts you to what that situation is, how serious it may be. And then your training goes, which is our last piece, will come into place. If you have, again, we talked about before, if you may have a couple of hard lines in the facility. So again, that's a good backup. If something doesn't work, you at least have a phone that has a direct line to first responders. Cell phone reception, we just talked about that. I'm sure a lot of these camps do not have cell phone reception, or maybe there's a part of the camp that does. So, we said, is there a place in the camp that has better reception? And if if you go over in the corner here, over by the canoe, whatever, you can get reception. Then make sure that is marked so that if somebody has a cell phone, they know where to go, and in a panic, there's the blue flag or something like that that'll give them an idea where to go. We also talked about providing an outdoor PA system. This is a great addition and backup for putting out a warning. It can be heard by all, including the threat. Again, code phrases would be established and understood when it's happened. So again, if you do not have particularly good communication, cells, whatever, and you have a PA system that you can put up, so that it's heard from, different parts of the camp. If that communication is, you get a code red or you get a whatever, or you see something that you can communicate back to your communications supervisor, who is probably at a main site, he or she then can get on the PA and say, hey, the sky's blue today, and that everyone would keep going, okay. And that's when, again, you would start in your training, and what we're going to go through is preparing for how you would take care of your campers. Again, we talked about this, so I have an idea. Who has cell phones, staff and campers? And I don't know what your regulations would be, your protocol. In my point of view, and I think I talked to this point a few minutes ago, campers do not have their phones. And that's a huge part, because you'll see through this presentation, that is what's going to really put a clog in the whole system. If every kid is trying to call home, we're trying to call the police. Police are getting so much information that it's going to be confusing. They're not going to know how to respond. So I'm glad to hear that if there is phones, that they're put into a certain, you give up your phones when you get to the camp, and they get locked away in case it may be an emergency. They have to call their parents or whatever. Staff will probably be the only ones that'll have them. And again, I'm sure each camp has their own protocol on who has them. But those become a really important part of it. Develop a simple and direct movement plan, and we'll go through that in a little bit. Other layers of security can be surveillance cameras positioned in specific locations around the camp, placing them in a strategic spots where campers congregate and where secure buildings have been designated. And again, finances will dictate what can be purchased. Even with less means, they have these Wi-Fi and other actually very inexpensive cameras. And what you can do is they're very portable, they're very small. You can place them in different locations, and you can pick them up and move them again. And they can be observed on your cell phone. So even if you don't have cell phone reception, these can be hooked up to your cell phone, so that if you're in a camp somewhere and these cameras can be activated, you can watch from a different location. So like we were talking about, which we will do later, when it comes to physical security, and you're at an entry point to the camp, and you can't afford to put somebody down there to raise and lower a bar or check people at the time. Putting a camera down there, that person, one of the supervisors or an office manager, can watch from a location and actually see who's coming and going. They see some red flags, they see something that doesn't look right, boom, they can make the decision on where they go from there. Outside the camp, so making connections with law enforcement and emergency response agencies is an essential part of the total communications operation. We do this with everything, including what we do when we're providing security situations around the state and around the country. We make a contact with local law enforcement. And what I suggest is that you develop this communication strategy for these types of situations, allowing a better understanding on their response. So you invite them in, you talk about what the plan you have in place for active shooter, assault, intruder, anything that they may want to respond to, and especially in an active shooter situation. It's paramount that they know who you are, you know who they are, and then you develop a plan together so that when something does happen, they're responding in a very effective, quick way. And that's the whole main point of this, and what makes the success, whether it's in schools, camps, or whatever, is how quick they respond, the information they have as they're responding. And so when they get there, they're not wasting time looking for somebody, looking for a place, and they're able to address that immediately. Again, personally meet with those who will respond, allow those respond to meet with staff for introductions. Invite law enforcement emergency agents for an on-site tour of the facility, confirming designated safe areas and what protocols are in place, such as hardening of secure locations and how staff and campers will react when law enforcement arrives. Have a mutual plan that works and is not confusing. So again, invite them in, show them the camp, show them everything, including the most important thing is, again, we'll discuss later, is where you're going to secure in place. They know exactly where campers are going to be, staff is going to be, and they can move and take care of whatever that threat is without having to check every door, check every window, check every place looking for campers to protect. Confusion is what ends disaster, which ends success. Provide a map of the camp, preferably with building placements, along with entry and exit locations. If no map is available with or no structures locations, make one. We find that when everybody knows what the camp looks like, one day and then you forget the next day, oh, I'm not sure where that building was. You provide those law enforcement, first responders, those maps. They're going to put them in their vehicles. They're going to have them at their buildings so that they can know and get familiar with it. And we even suggest this for, providing one for a camper. You have a camper or a young person in there. You have a little trifold or whatever that they can stick in their pocket or in their backpack or whatever, so that if in case something happens, they will see, oh, there's the building over here, or here's a street or a road that I can get to a safe location. And again, it's about making sure that everyone knows where everything is. Exchange phone numbers and cells between staff administration and response supervisor. So you meet each other, you understand, the camp. Hi, I'm Scott. Hi, I'm Mary. And here's our phone numbers. So when something does happen, they have a direct, you're going right to your cell phone, or it's a hard line at the office. And again, make sure staff is part of these procedures for continuity. If you're keeping this amongst yourselves and you're just kind of bleeding this out to different people, somebody is going to be left out. And again, we found that the biggest challenge is when everything happens and everybody is doing the right thing, and there's one or two people that don't because they weren't part of the discussion, you're in trouble. So I go to preparation, and again, inside the camp. Once communication has been thoroughly covered and understood, preparing for a serious incident is crucial for any success. Great communications with poor preparation will always end in disaster. Again, every staff and camp employee need to be part of this. You only take one individual who has not participated in this to turn success into disaster. And here's where we get to how that is. I do not advocate the theory of run first and secure in place second. And some of that is now being taught in the schools. If a shooter's coming down the hallway, you're in a classroom, run. I will tell you this, that does not work, because a shooter is looking for sound and movement. And as that shooter is going through the school or through a camp, whatever, and he sees or she sees movement running, that's what they're going to direct their attention on. So we say secure in place. Unless that's your only option at the time and you've been cut off from getting to a secure location, then that you're going to have to do your best to run away. Providing a running target will always be the first, get the first attention of the shooter. So select a secure and safe location. And again, as I've talked to Jim and found out kind of that there's very differences in camps, depending on structural availability. Some may have buildings with doors and windows, some may have a platform or tent. If buildings are available, select those that will be close enough to support staff and campers for quick access. If the camp is spread out, select 2 or 3 locations, and we talk about this later. Some of these camps are big, so you're not going to want to put one location here and that's it. Select some that are give quick access. If there's a stable over here and you're doing horseback riding over here, you're canoeing over here, you're doing something else, you're going to want to have something in those areas that these campers and staff can get to fairly quickly. You do not want them running across the whole camp to get to that one secure location. If the facility has no hardened structures, select sites in the wood line, again, where staff and campers can run to and get out of the sight of the threat. In these situations, provide a bright or easily recognized marker for those to quickly see and run to. This will go for the structures as well, especially when there's nothing and you're looking to direct them to a spot off the campus. Flag, marker, something that, again, when you do your introductions to your campers, they're going to know where these locations are. So if something happens, they're running, they're looking, and they're seeing those particular selected sites. And again, staff and law enforcement and whoever's responding is already going to be prepped to. Here's where they will probably be when the situation ends. Provide campers a map of these locations, both structural and woodline options. Again, that's, they can stick in their pocket. So when confusion starts and everybody gets tunnel vision, they at least have something visual to look at. With buildings being the secure location, make sure that doors or door can be locked from the inside. And I know a lot of these camps probably do not have a lock on the inside for good reasons. So if that's not possible, then construct a catch at each side of the door to allow a bar to be placed across the door. So again, if it's locked, then it's very simple. You know, you're going to divide, put two locks or two catches on each side of the door. You have a bar that's, you know, positioned right by the door. It's out of the way. If something happens and you get in, you can close the door and put the bar in front of it. That's going to stop an intruder from coming through. For windows, we found there are two options that work. There's a window application that will stop firearms rounds and will also stop someone from breaking in. And this is a application, it's not that expensive, that can be applied to the windows. And, you know, they may be 2 or 3 different layers on it, depending on how much they want to protect. It's see-through, you don't even know it's there, but it will stop a round. And it will also stop somebody from trying to break in. We have them on our vehicles. So we found through looking at examples that it just basically doesn't give in. It just keeps hitting splintering, but it just won't give in. So that's an option if you can afford to do it. And again, they're not that expensive. The other option is for windows is just maybe either fabricating a wooden slide with maybe metal on it or whatever that you can pick up that's next to windows. You pick it up, you just slide it into place. It's not expensive, they're easy to make. And again, that's probably as effective as the window application. Door goes, they don't see who's in, it provides a barrier. They're going to basically, if they can't get into a place, they're going to move to another location. Once inside and the doors and windows are secured, use any furniture placed in the middle of the room, or if an interior wall is available, use it in conjunction with these items. So if you have interior walls inside and you have desks, you have chairs, you know, you kind of, it's like circling the wagons. You kind of find a place where you can have that wall, put stuff in front of it, and you're going to get hunkered down behind it. If you don't, and the reason why we say go to the middle of the room, if there's no interior walls, you're not going to be up against the wall with your, you know, your stuff in front of you because you can shoot through the wall. So get to the middle because you can add, you know, it adds a little bit more protection than being up against the wall. Strict sound management is a must. And I know children, depending on the ages, are going to be scared. And again, a lot of this is going to come down to staff. And it's, again, we come back to this training, and being, know exactly what to do when the time passes. They're going to be able to keep their campers, hopefully, as quiet as possible. Once you've got yourself into a room, you're going to have to try to keep that quiet because the thread is going to be drawn by sight and sound. If they don't hear anything, they're going to move on. And again, place a marker on the building that first responders who have been part of the preparation plan can immediately move to. So when they're getting to the camp and they know what the situation is, they're going to be able to move. They know there's the building, there's a marker on it. You know, it could be anything that you want to come up, your imagination, but as long as they know that building over there is where they have selected as a secure location. And then work on a code word or phrase with local and state officials who will be responding when they approach the building and want you to come in. Because you're not going to open up that door, that window to anyone until you know it's a law enforcement officer, first responder, and you've already made that connection with them. And once that, you know, phrases, then they can come in and the process starting a continuity, who's there, and you guys can move through that. Here we go to the portable radio, or cell phones during the crisis is crucial. And I'm glad, again, that there are not going to be campers in there. So there's going to be a selected number of cell phones that are going to be communicating. But again, the radio is an easy cell phone reception, you know, people trying to get through. That portable radio is really the lifeline to making that communication, because if you're on one end of the camp and your staff member is involved in something, they're being able to get on that radio. The code word is put out. Your communication supervisor is going to be able to communicate with them. So there's not going to be a lot of communicating back and forth. That then they can call the first responders, and they're giving those first responders clear and accurate information right through the actual assault, so that when they respond, they're knowing, well, the person in the red shirt, that's our person. They're moving over here. They're over by building A, building B, and they can respond to very effectively. Radio and cell phone discipline is a must. Again, staff will have selected a communications supervisor, and pass vital information should go through him or her, who would then pass it on to those first responders. This, again, can make a huge difference between success and failure. And a discussion, again, should be made on the cell phone access to campers, which we've already dealt with. So we can pass through that. Outside the camp, obviously, finances will dictate the structural and human options for perimeter security. Providing some sort of vehicle stop prior to entering the camp would be preferred, but sometimes not possible. Having security personnel checking incoming visitors and assessing possible threats, red flags will reduce the chances of serious incidents. Just the presence of someone at the entry point, welcoming visitors, asking for names and how they can help, that may discourage a potential threat. So we've found in the past that, again, whether it's a disgruntled family member, or again, you have not only campers and employees, staff and employees, you also have maintenance people. You have all these other individuals that are working in the camp. 9 out of 10 times, it's not going to be some deranged knucklehead coming in with his gun trying to hose people down. It's going to be someone that is upset because their girlfriend just dumped them. And this could be depending on the age of the campers. 17, 18, you see who is behind most of these shootings is a young high school age person. So they just got dumped by their girlfriend who's going to the camp. So that's the kind of threats that we look at. So when we're talking about seeing a red flag, that may be something that will be caught right there. And or word of mouth is somebody's really upset, they made some threats. That needs to be brought to the camp and to the staff. Again, posting signs, again, no firearms, no alcohol, severe consequences will be given. Those are placed, again, just for not only liability issues, but anyone coming in will know that, well, they're security minded. Again, encourage local law enforcement to stop from time to time to check in and develop that relationship. We found that, especially where you're at, you could be anywhere from a local law enforcement, sheriff, state police officer. It could be, a warden, because you may be in areas where there is no, actual law enforcement within 100 miles, except maybe a state trooper. If you invite them in, because they're going to be part of this preparation, and they should be right from the beginning once you decide that you want to do this kind of training, because they're the ones you're going to have to be asking to come and relying on them. So have them come in, have them have a coffee, build that. They are driving around for hours. They want to stop and meet. How you doing? And come on in, and any problems that you may have had at that time, some concerns, you can share them. Getting that out ahead of a situation. We saw this guy, he came in last night, we didn't know, we got his license plate, something like that. Get that to them, and they can start working on that case there is an issue. Again, we talked about this before, placement of surveillance cameras. And again, I'm sure that on this side where camps are, tents and platforms may not have the ability to have cameras in all over the place. On the other end, they have them at every location. But there are options that if your finances are this, you can utilize these smaller portable surveillance cameras that you can place when you want, and you can move those around at any point where some of the other ones are fixed. But having that availability where someone is at one location, being able to monitor these different locations is really a must. And then we end with training. And training brings together all three steps to ensure a successful outcome. And again, this is where you invite law enforcement to participate or to observe and input. You put this training on, and what we've done in the past is that we kind of do a crawl, walk, and run. It's usually a 2-hour presentation for the first one. And, we walk through a scenario. And so what we do is, we have a bad guy, and it's all walking through. It's all talking. We're going to give you a scenario, and we're going to see how you react. We give them all a class ahead of time on communication preparation. You kind of go on through and show them what should be done as far as preparing for this. And then you just walk through a scenario. So we have a bad guy. This is where it's happening. What are you going to do? And we kind of talk them through it. We see how they react. We correct what they're doing, and we kind of end it with a little debriefing. What did you see? How did you feel? Well, I was confused about this. Okay, let's discuss it. Now we're going to do, that was the crawl, we do a walk. So now it's a little bit more brisk, and we kind of push them to, okay, what are you going to do now? And they react, we talk through that, and then we do finally with a run. And it kind of gets everybody excited, get the adrenaline going. That's where you're really going to see, even though it's a practice one, we find that they're like, wow, that was, pretty scary, or it was like, wow, yes, and everybody is then kind of works together on correcting any problems, and then we sit down and talk about it afterwards. Again, if you've invited law enforcement, they can have their input, and now they know how people are going to react with them. And again, we're utilizing all the communication skills, the preparation, the secure buildings, and we walk them through that. And again, like I said, we kind of stop along the way so there's no confusion. And we want to make sure no one's left out. We encourage questions along and with input. And it's amazing how many young kids, young adults have given us some great input. Well, what about this? Could you try it this way? And we're like, it's a great idea. So there's no wrong question, no wrong answer. And, we put that into our plan as well. Again, at the end, we ask for questions, comments, concerns. We encourage the staff to do a refresher 1-hour class, maybe mid through the camp, just to kind of get their staff together and say, hey, let's just make sure we're all, on the same page. How's our communication? Do we need to replace radios? Do we need to, upgrade different parts of it? Do we still remember what we went through a month or so ago? And so just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind. So there's that assurance. And I think we found that if you just give them a class and then 5 months later, something happens, they have completely forgotten how to do it. And again, they want to feel comfortable. They want to feel that they can provide that safety and security for their campers. It's the worst feeling in the world to, you're the adult there, so to speak, and you're the one that they're turning to, and you completely drop the ball. So, again, lastly, it's everyone's responsibility to look for red flags and warning signals. And again, as they say, if you see it, do something. Don't just, when we say do something, I mean physically. You need to get to somebody to talk to, explain what's going on, and make sure that they understand. So that's kind of it. There's, we can go into other aspects if you have questions, comments. I may be off on what some camps do or what their protocols are or whatever, but kind of that's how we put the training on. And then again, we're more than happy to come in and do an assessment of your camp, meet with local law enforcement, and bring them together at your camp with your staff. And I thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Scott. I'll have you stay there, actually, Scott, if there's any questions that come up and you want to type them in. We have one question here, and it actually comes along, Scott, with map of the camp, labeling buildings. Should it be labeled a building by a name, or a better building A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, or an actual, if every, all camps typically name each cabin in other buildings?
I would say that, especially for first responders, it should be a number. So it's easily, instead of, Acadia cabin or, whatever that becomes confusing because you're looking for a name. But if there's a little number on the, up above or somewhere on the building that's visible, and then they have the camp diagram with here's 1 through whatever, and they can make it so that if they're entering here, 1 starts over here and goes around the camp so that 10 is over here. So they know if a staff member is on a radio saying he's over here, it's by, building number 5, they're going to just go straight to that, and they know, where they have to go. So I would just leave it as simple as possible.
Would the same go for roads as well? So some camps have a multiple splintered system of roads.
Right. I would put for roads, because you don't want to have number 1 road and then you got number 1 building. So in that point, I would make them very simple road and name that whatever you want to name it, because they're still going to have the diagram. So they're going to see that, well, this is Main Road, this is
Delivery Road.
Right, Spring Road. They're going to have that. So I would leave those as a name, and again, the buildings, I think, is where it's going to be the most crucial that it's simple.
And another one here. So you're talking about off-site secure location, and then the tree line. I mean, how deep, how far do you go with the staff and campers before you say, okay, we feel we're far enough away from the site?
We look at it as that it's far enough off that you can, you're not, because if you get too far into it, then it's the whole idea of, if something happens, campers start scattering, and you're trying to herd cats then back to it. You want it, close enough that it's not that deep, but far enough away that it basically obscures the view of the threat. So, and you want to have trees. You want to have something that is, solid, that you can get behind and get down, and you keep your campers within eyesight of each other. So I guess it would depend on the logistics of the camp and what that looks like. I would want to come in and say, this is a good spot. And because there's trees, there's cover, that person's not going to be able to see, even if they walk to the tree line, they're looking down. It's far enough away, but that they can be hidden. So I would say it would have to be an assessment.
Great. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
So on that question of, having designated locations, there was some talk at some point about not having everyone together because, obviously if everyone's together, then everyone's more vulnerable.
Right.
So would your recommendation be that, that there are multiple locations?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think depending on, again, the size of the camp, the bigger the camp, the more locations you have, but there should be at least, even if it's a small one, there should be at least 2 that subdivide the camp. So bigger camp, you're going to want to subdivide that even more. So with a large camp, yeah, I would want one at, again, what would be the easiest and quickest route to get to it. And, maybe all your campers are at one spot at one time. And there's that one. You don't want everybody into that one building. So you're going to hopefully have to, as a staff member, well, you go to building 1, we're going to go to building 2, building 3. And again, that's going to be the training part of it. But yeah, you don't want all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
And then one other question I had was about code words. So I took part of it in a training, maybe 5 years ago or more, where they actually were reticent to use code words because then of the issues of communication that, we may create in our camp a code word that then law enforcement or whoever else is helping us doesn't understand. So what's your on that?
I think we've looked at it in this past as well, is that there has to be a code word, because if you start yelling over or talking through your walkie-talkie, hey, there's a guy running around with a gun out here. the staff is going to hear that, but also campers standing around you are going to hear it. So if you go with a code word that everybody is on board with, that's when you meet with your local law enforcement who's going to be responding and say, we're going to be giving a code word of red, and that means this is what's going on. So when that supervisor, who is the communication supervisor, is, he hears that or she hears that, she's on the phone calling and saying, this is what we just got. We discussed this before. Code red means we have an active shooter. Mm-hmm. And that starts the ball rolling with everybody, depending on how they're going to react.
Are there standardized sort of code words that?
Not really. I mean, okay. It's kind of, we found everybody has so many different types. We want to keep it to, when you hear red, wow, again, I don't want to say red is dead, but, red gives everybody, that's the worst scenario. And kind of work your way down the color scheme, so to speak, that would, an assault, we would do a yellow, or, an intruder would be a black or something, whatever, but keep it to really just 3 or 4 that most people would look at that as, red's bad, black is bad, yellow is, in between.
I had one other question. I'm forgetting what it was.
And again, this is all, it really comes down to doing what's comfortable for you and for your camp. So Camp A would want to do it this way. Camp B would want to do it this way. But as long as it has this communication, preparation, and training, and because your training is what's going to carry the day when it's all said and done. If you don't do the training, none of these are going to work.
The consistency.
Consistency, yes.
Yeah. So can you maybe just quickly address, you talked briefly about posting signs, mm-hmm. like things that you should have signage about, no firearms, no alcohol. Can you just? Yeah,
I think, I found when we looked at, well, I didn't know, because you're going to have hunters, you're going to have different individuals, and again, this, in the state of Maine, you can carry, and you can carry concealed. So when you come into a camp, there should be signs that are saying, no firearms, and it should be very, strict. No firearms, no alcohol, no drugs, because if somebody, I didn't know, you're going to have proof that signs are here, and those are signs too. You can put, we have surveillance. You may not, or you may have limited, but you can put those signs up. So somebody who's coming to maybe case the place out or do a little recon of it, they see this, and this, and they're going to move on to something else, or they're going to start thinking, well, they probably have surveillance, they probably have security. So those are all good things to do ahead of time.
So those would be at your entrance?
Yes.
And then the other question you mentioned about smaller portable cameras.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, are there certain?
There's again, a lot of it is if you have cell phone, you have Wi-Fi, you have something. If you don't, there's other things we're looking at and right now that will work directly with your phone, that you do not have to, it'll work with your phone's reception, not with Wi-Fi. But they're smaller. We've used them when we do a surveillance or whatever. They're very small. You can place them in different places, but they really have a very good resolution and a good wide range. And so if you can't afford to put somebody down at an entry point, you can put a couple of cameras down there, one camera, and you can monitor it further into the camp by somebody in the office. But nowadays there's so many different tools out there and gadgets that, and again, they don't cost a whole lot.
Is there a brand you recommend on those small?
I'd have to look into that again, but I will, and that we're doing that right now, not only for situations like this, but for our situations.
If you could send it on to me, I'll
Absolutely.
Get the information, I'll share it.
Absolutely, yeah. And anything here that we can share with you, I'll let Ron know, or Jim, or yourself, where you can get this stuff.
Do we have any other questions, Jim?
Yeah, one here is, if an incident was to occur during a time when the entire camp is congregated in a building that is not securable, are there other protocols that you can recommend?
it's, and that could be true. You could be dinner time, you're all in the chow hall, as we called it, and something's happening. At that point, again, you want to do a training. We're going to do this if we have an active shooter, and they're on the grounds, then that's where, again, what is the closest to, or what structures will be able to be effective for those campers. And maybe at that point, if you have everybody there, and again, this is where situation dictates. If they're close, you want to get out of there. And so if it's everybody can go out the back door and get to, again, another place, maybe that's in the wood line, even though you have structures, but it's the closest place, that's going to be the staff kind of being on top of it and saying, is it better that we separate and go to different buildings and getting us out there being targets, or we're here, we know we can go here, and the shooter is over here? Then that's going to be what you want to do. Get to the closest secure area that you can get to, especially if you're in a large group.
Great. Well, thank you, Scott, and we appreciate your time. And again, Scott Durst with TetraPoint. We can certainly share Scott's contact information with anyone that's interested. You can email Ron, and we'll circulate that.
Okay.
Appreciate your time for everyone joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you.